Would you like to know what it says about the 112th Pope? I'll tell you one thing. It says he will be the Pope for the final judgment. I feel that what you're about ready to hear will change your paradigm for end times forever. For instance, they investigated secret files from the Vatican that shows that the Vatican has been in communication and been researching aliens from other planets that strongly affect your whole understanding of the last days. And you predicted that in March of 2012, the Pope would resign for health reasons, and let's be candid, they missed it. Did you?
Well, at first, actually, we thought we might have. Now we learned that, in fact, we did not. We made a prediction that Benedict would retire in either March or April of 2012, citing health reasons. When that date came and went and no activity had transpired, we moved to the second part in our prediction, which we also made in 2012, that at a minimum he would retire before the end of 2013. Now we've learned, by the way, from the editor of the El Observatorio Romano, which is the Vatican's owned official media outlet, that in fact Pope Benedict officially resigned at the end of March 2012 privately to a handful of cardinals who held it in a strict reserve, in a confidence. It couldn't be told even to other cardinals. This happened last year. He made it official in 2013, so in a very supernatural, dramatic way, we were actually right in both instances.
Well, the prophecy of the popes was allegedly given to Saint Malachi Morgare, an Irish saint, in 1139 AD. Now, the way that this story is told, Malachi made a pilgrimage to Rome to see the Pope, and right outside of the city of Rome, he had a vision of all the popes up until the tribulation period. So he wrote down a series of short Latin phrases for 112 popes, except the last one, which is quite a bit more detailed. The last prophecy, the prophecy for the very next pope, says, "In the extreme persecution of the Holy Roman Church, there will sit Peter the Roman, who will nurse the sheep in many tribulations. When they are finished, the city of Seven Hills will be destroyed, and the dreadful judge will judge his people." It's the last one on Malachi's list, and I just cited the prediction for this pope. It says, in the extreme persecution, the tribulation, the dreadful judge will judge the people. So it really does sound like the end times, and it matches the book of Revelation in some pretty compelling ways in chapter 17, which also speaks of a seven-hilled city. Well, the records in the Vatican go back centuries. Actually, I wrote 2 chapters of history concerning the Vatican's interest in extraterrestrials. They have a whole theology developed around what they call the principle of plenitude, meaning anything that God could do, he would do. So they consider the existence of aliens an inevitable consequence of God's omnipotence.
Now, you've actually researched with Vatican astronomers. What do they tell you?
Yeah, it's extraordinary. We even had the opportunity to go to Mount Graham in Arizona, which is where their Vatican Astronomical Technology Telescope, called that, where it's at, where the Vatican's astronomers study the deep space. And in the course of doing that, getting permission through the Arizona State University to go there to meet with their astronomers, the Jesuits who are there, we also got access to top astronomers that work in Rome, including an astronomer by the name of Guy Cosmonago. He's one of the top astronomers for the Vatican.
What was the major thing you got from your interview with him?
Oh, well, 2 major things. One, he says without apology that very soon the nations of the world are going to look to the aliens for their salvation. Want to find out where are they coming from. So he agreed to be interviewed 5 times from Rome, and then gave us documents which are not available to the public that outline what much of the inner thinking of the highest level theologians and astronomers at the Vatican believe now, including the idea that Jesus might be the son of a star child. Now, when we ask him what is a star child, right, they're talking about an alien intelligence from another world, and that the birth of Jesus Christ, the virgin birth, was in fact comparable to an abduction scenario in which these aliens used the Virgin Mary to create Jesus. And this is one of the ways in which they're combining the idea that we are soon to be visited by an alien savior from another world.
Well, up on top of Mount Graham in Arizona, there's an observatory complex. It consists of 3 very high-powered telescopes. One is the Vatican Advanced Technology Telescope. There's a radio telescope, and then there's one called the Large Binocular Telescope. This is the most powerful telescope in the world. In fact, they told us they can get better images of space than the Hubble Space Telescope can. Now, attached to this telescope is an infrared camera named Lucifer, which is really a kind of an odd name for a camera. And from the information that we gathered, this thing was named by the Max Planck Institute and some German astronomers. But the Vatican is part of this conglomerate up there, that they're all working together. Now, what this instrument's used for is astrobiology, for looking for exoplanets, looking for other worlds. And the infrared spectrum is also very useful for seeing things that can't be seen with the naked eye. And many UFO researchers have noted that you can see a lot of ships and entities that you normally can't see.
Well, first of all, the day that we spent on Mount Graham, the entire day there, we had the Jesuits speaking to us face to face. We also had systems engineers. It was astonishing, the access that they gave us. And one of the things we found amazing in the use of the Lucifer device and even the other telescopes is how commonly the astronomers spoke of UFOs. We were just taken back by the fact that it was almost a nuisance to them that there are so many. And so the phenomenon, to me, is certainly real. Then, of course, you begin defining what it is. Well, to the Vatican and to the astronomers...
But wait a second, it's demonic. Why would the Vatican be studying this?
Yeah, well, not only are they studying it, Corrado Balducci, who was the spokesman for the Vatican, he was their official mouthpiece concerning the alien presence, not just the reality of aliens on other worlds, but an alien presence that is here on Earth now. You can go to YouTube and watch his shows on Italian television when he spoke for the church and said that the church was using its embassies around the world to compile information, a case study, if you will, on what the aliens are doing on Earth now. So the belief system is deep, regardless of what you or I might make out of it. And I got to tell you, especially when it comes to alien abduction, I am convinced that we are talking about demonic activity, not intelligences from another world, maybe from another dimension. What they're saying to us now is it's going to affect Christian belief. There is a professor for the Pope's University in Rome, and he is a very highly respected intellectual. His last name is Tanzaniti. And he has written a paper now in which he is saying that very soon, not right in the beginning, we won't have to deny our Christian faith in the beginning. But there is information coming from another world, and once it is confirmed, it is going to require a rereading of the gospel as we know it. And that's the kind of information that we are receiving from the highest levels of Vatican intelligentsia.
Where's this headed, in your opinion, after all this research?
I think it's headed towards an imminent great deception. I think they either know something or they suspect something, and that's why they're preparing the Catholic faithful. And of course, the Vatican has reached beyond Catholics, but they're trying to prepare the world. Well, the idea among both Catholics and Protestant scholars is that he will be the final pope. He is the one who is going to be residing over the Vatican as it enters into the Great Tribulation period. And there's also the belief among even some of the Catholic mystics that he might be a false pope, an anti-pope, somebody who helps give rise to the Antichrist.
Let me tell you something. Judaism, Christianity, and other religions have focused on the year 2012. You know, remember the Mayan prediction, the end of the world in 2012? So everyone's discounted all of that, but that's not exactly what the prediction said. What did it say?
in the conferences where I spoke last year, I kept telling people, don't say it's the end of the world. That's not what the Maya said. That's not what the Aztecs said. That's not what the Cherokee Indians said, all of whose calendar rolled over at the end of 2012. What was it that they were saying? They were saying 2012 was the end of an era, and 2013 marks a new dispensation. Now, the Maya said some things that were very interesting. They said it would be marked by the emergence of two great male figures who would emerge upon the earth. They sound very much like they're talking about the false prophet and the Antichrist. They talked about their god Bolyon Yakteku, the spirit of it, coming up from out of the underworld. Now, what does this god do? He guards the bones and the seed of the giants that are in the underworld, and that spirit would begin to rise in the year 2013, giving birth even to a new form of humanity.
You're talking about what I've read about and pondered so many times in the Bible. Maybe you've read this about the Nephilim, where the sons of God cohabited with the daughters of humans and produced great giants. That's what it sounds like to me.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. And furthermore, turn-of-the-century preachers, including Jonathan Edwards, marked the year 2012 to 2016 as the date when the false prophet and the Antichrist would appear. Dozens of Protestant reformers marked these years hundreds of years ago. Not only that, and you appreciate this with your Jewish ministries, the Zohar, one of the most important books of Jewish Kabbalah ever written.
It is accepted in traditional Judaism as coming from God. It's not all from God, I can tell you as a fact, but it's an interesting situation that it talks about.
In a section of the Zohar called Signs Heralding Mashiach, the Coming of the Messiah, they marked the year 5773, which in the Jewish calendar began in September 2012 and comes through into this year 2013, and said that was the time. In fact, much of the prophecy sounds almost identical to the prophecy of the popes. It is a time that will lead to the destruction of Rome, and more importantly, they said, at that time Messiah will begin making himself known to the nations of the world. This 700 years ago prophesied that between 2012 to 2013, the emergence of the Messiah would appear on earth, almost an identical parallel to cultures around the world that for thousands of years saw these dates specifically as the time when the end times would begin.
Well, what happened in Fatima, Portugal in 1917 was really just that, in my opinion. Now, up to 70,000 people gathered in a field, supposedly to see an apparition of the Virgin Mary. But if you go and read the descriptions of what people call the miracle of the sun, they actually describe seeing a gray, silvery disk rotating around in the sky and kind of putting a cascade of colors, like a rainbow of colors. And so it really, in 1917, no one had vocabulary of words like flying saucer.
But there are secret plans for welcoming. The Vatican will welcome in this alien from another planet as God.
Which is what Paul calls Satan in Ephesians chapter 2. Now, the demonic realm in the New Testament worldview was the atmosphere above the earth.
Vatican experts have told us when Father Malachi Martin was asked, why is the Vatican, why do they have a presence on Mount Graham? And one of the things we haven't had time to talk about is Mount Graham is sacred to the Apache. It is a stargate through which they've, for centuries, have seen creatures that come, that move back and forth.
Now, this is right in Arizona.
This is in Arizona. And in fact, their creation mythos is that a disc came down and a bearded guy in the disc, who was the father of creation, was what established Mount Graham as a holy mountain. Well, anyway, when Malachi Martin was asked, why is the Vatican on Mount Graham? What are they doing up there? He said that they're using their telescope to watch something. And when he was pressed on the question, he said it's because at the highest levels of the Vatican governance, they know what is approaching the earth, and it will be of the utmost importance in coming years. They're literally watching something with the Lucifer device that is approaching planet Earth now.
And what do you believe they're looking for?
I think that they could be deceived. I think they're watching something and they think it's one thing, and I think it's something else. Lucifer, I think it's Satan. I think Jesus said, I beheld Satan as lightning falling from heaven. He has to do with the power of the air. And of course, you know, when Pope Benedict stepped down not long ago, twice lightning struck the top of the St. Peter's Basilica. And this goes back to their belief system. In Romanism, the belief was that the God would tell you when somebody should step down and when a new king should be elected. It was called augurism, and it's where we take the word inaugural or inauguralism for the placement of a new king.
Did you?
Well, at first, actually, we thought we might have. Now we learned that, in fact, we did not. We made a prediction that Benedict would retire in either March or April of 2012, citing health reasons. When that date came and went and no activity
You're about ready to hear will change your paradigm for end times forever. For instance, they investigated secret files from the Vatican that shows that the Vatican has been in communication and been researching aliens from other planets. Would you like to know what it says about the 112th Pope? I'll tell you one thing. It says he will be the Pope for the final judgment. I feel that what you
had transpired, we moved to the second part in our prediction, which we also made in 2012, that at a minimum he would retire before the end of 2013. Now we've learned, by the way, from the editor of the El Observatorio Romano, which is the Vatican's owned official media outlet,
that strongly affect your whole understanding of the last days. And you stated, you predicted that in March of 2012, the Pope would resign for health reasons, and let's be candid, they missed it.